Enough time. Shall I start? My name's Sean Clark. I'm chair of the Computer Arts Society, and this is the second annual Reichardt lecture. And we're very happy, very pleased to have them. What I know will be a very interesting talk. Made a few little notes just to make sure I don't forget some very important things. So Francesca is a Venetian-born art historian and curator based in the UK and Italy. With a PhD in history of art, specialising in computer art. And I thought I'd mention a few of your projects. You curated the Algorithmic Signs exhibition, which hopefully people here know about. If not, look online, because that was a really important exhibition. You also wrote the book Generative Art Systems, the work of Ernest Edmonds. And Ernest is here with us. Yeah. Again, Ernest was my supervisor, so that was essential reading for me. You also wrote The Algorithmic Dimension, 5 Artists in Conversation, and that, I think both of the books I mentioned are available from Amazon. Yes, they're right. Yeah. And in 2020, you curated the Vera Molnar Icon 2020 exhibition, and in 2022 you curated Venice Biennale. And you're going to talk to us about the work of Vera Molnar today, which I know is going to be fascinating. You also asked me to mention that you are currently Art Gallery Chair at SIGGRAPH 2025, which sounds like a really exciting project. Maybe you'll mention a bit about that towards the end of your talk. Yeah. And we're going to give you 45 minutes or so, and there will be time for questions. And afterwards, there will be wine. So, and opportunities to look at some of the artifacts that Francesca has brought along, and also just to generally socialise and chat. So I think we have the space here. I think we have it until 8 or 9, so we can chat away afterwards. So I'd like to hand you over to Francesca Franco, and I'm looking forward to what I know will be a fascinating talk.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me here. It's a great honor to be here. First of all, because I have been a keen supporter and a big fan of the Computer Arts Society since I was a PhD student here in London over 20 years ago, which makes me feel really ancient. And this society has invited me many times to present my research, which was really important for the development and the growth of my research and my career as a researcher. So I'm deeply grateful for that. And I'm also incredibly humbled to be the first speaker of this annual Jasia Reichardt lecture, following Jasia's inaugural talk last year. She's been one of the most influential figures in my career. She was very inspiring, and she inspired my journey and even shaping my decision to become a curator. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be here tonight. So I would like to dedicate this talk to the incredible Vera Molnar, whose pioneering work in computer art has been a constant source of inspiration for me. And for this talk, I'd like to share the story of Icon 2020, which is a commission that I had the privilege to work on with Vera. And tonight I'll share some of the lessons that I learned along the way, from working with a true pioneer like Vera to navigating through the challenges and joy of curating projects like this one. And I would also talk about how I got involved with Icon 2020 and what led me to that particular project. And I hope this will offer some insights into the ongoing dialogue between art and technology and how these worlds can intersect in creative and also unexpected ways. So my journey into computational art started with my background as an art historian, but it was my work as a curator that really brought me into close collaboration with pioneers of generative art like Vera Molnar Roman Verosco, Frieder Nake, Manfred Mohr, and Ernest Edmonds. So working with these incredible artists has been transformative, leading to projects that have really shaped my career in kind of surprising ways. One standout moment was working on a commission with Vera in Murano, Venice. And that experience eventually led to curating her historic debut at the Venice Biennale when she was 97. Our collaboration continued with several more projects, each one deepening our exploration of generative art right up until Vera's final days. And along the way, I've learned a lot about creativity, innovation, and the lasting impact of computational art. So these experiences have shaped the way I think about the field and inspire me to explore new avenues. So I hope tonight I can spark some of that same excitement about the endless possibilities of computational art. Just to give you some background about myself, I've always been passionate about art and art history from a young age, and I've been fortunate to have encountered people that encouraged me to pursue this passion right from the beginning. My academic journey started in a very traditional way through art history in Venice, where I earned my first degree, focusing on the iconology of Venetian Renaissance female portraits from the early 1800s. And this one here was one of the main characters of my thesis back then. And as you might guess, I've never approached my career choices strategically. And while it may appear that my path has been linear, I've never viewed it in that way. So I've seen it more like a non-conventional journey shaped by serendipity and a commitment to follow my interests and passions. So my most fulfilling projects, particularly curating exhibitions and commissioning artworks with artists, have emerged from all of this. They've always felt more like an urge or an impulse to bring them to fruition rather than being externally driven. So my journey into digital art history started back in 1998, sparked by my fascination with Aby Warburg's Big Der Atlas Memosyne. And I was really excited to see recently at the ZKM, especially on this subject. It kind of made everything, it made sense to me. It puts all these pieces together. And I was really fascinated by his exploration of recurring visual motifs across different eras. And that really struck a chord with me and eventually led to my involvement in founding an academic journal focused on this atlas. So that experience opened my eyes to the possibilities of using computer technologies to explore and visualize our connection within Warburg's work. And I felt like perfect timing when I learned about a new MA program at the University of London called Computer Applications for the History of Art. So I signed up right away, and I was really excited to combine my interest in art history with emerging digital tools. So that program not only gave me practical skills, like we were learning how to write HTML, making websites for museums, but also introduced the history of digital art, which I found fascinating. It was a field filled with incredible pioneers, many of whom were still active and eager to share their insights with me at the time. So shifting from researching Renaissance art, where most of the work involved digging through books in libraries, because that was pre-Google, to exploring the history of computer art was a transformative experience for me. So suddenly I could reach out directly to the pioneers of computer art through email or even meet them in person. And that accessibility made the history of art so alive and dynamic in a way that I hadn't experienced before. So after completing my PhD in digital art history here in London, I had my first research fellowship at the V&A, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, where I worked with Nick Lambert, Jeremy Gardiner, and Douglas Dodds on a project that followed the Cash project, which was a project led by Charlie Gear, Paul Brown, and Catherine Mason. And there I focused on the Patrick Prince collection of computer art, which had been donated to the museum by the American art historian Patrick Prince. And this is a picture that I took in 2010 during this fellowship with my first reflex camera that I bought with my first salary as a researcher there. So I'm really proud of this, and I really like it as it's a nice memory of that time. So that collection, together with the Computer Art Society archive, is now at the heart of the V&A Digital Art Collection. So it was an amazing chance to study that and contextualize the evolution of computer art within the larger story of art history. So during my research, I realized that not much had been done, especially from an art historical perspective, on the pioneers of computer art. So that gap really motivated me to focus on their work, giving these artists the recognition that they deserve. And through their creations, I felt like I could piece together the story, or at least one version of it, of media art. This experience allowed me to directly engage with many artists, including Vera Molnar, but also Manfred Moore, Ernest Edmonds, Roman Verosco, Harold Cohen, Frieder Nake, and many others. And the result of this was my first book on the work of generative art pioneer Ernest Edmonds, generative systems art. And I'm really happy that he's here because we're still working together at the moment for a new commission in collaboration with SIGGRAPH, Gazelli, and Milan Digital Cultural Center. And I also published a series of publications about the history of early computer art and how media art entered traditional art institutions, such as the Venice Biennale from the 1960s till the present time. So my research at that point focused on exploring how the early developments of computational art intersect with past traditions, such as constructivism and systems art. And the main challenge I set myself was finding ways to integrate computational art into the broader story of traditional art history. And one of the biggest questions I had is how do we bring the stories of these pioneers to life? In 2017, I had the chance to curate algorithmic science in Venice, which was a really exciting experience. It was the first time that I realized just how much curating could help me share my research, something that's often seen as a niche part of contemporary art, with a broader, more general audience. And that exhibition really taught me how powerful curatorial work can be in making complex ideas and histories accessible. So the foundation that hosted the exhibition was the Fondazione Bevilacqua Masa, which had a very central place in Venice. And with this exhibition, I explored the history of generative art, by showcasing the work of 5 pioneering artists. Manfred Moore here on this picture, and Vera Molnar, Frieder Nake, Roman Verosco, and and Ernest Edmonds that I'm going to tell more later. The way I curate exhibition usually is like I usually involve the artists personally. So here's me in London with Roman Verosco while we were recording an interview together for algorithmic science, and also with with Vera sitting on the floor of her studio in Paris when we were selecting works together. So the idea was to show, here's Manfred when he was installing that installation in the entrance of the gallery. So the exhibition was about showing how generative art has evolved over time and highlighting the unique contributions of each artist. But I also wanted to do more than just showcase their individual work. I aim to tell the story of the broader movement so that visitors could see how these artists shaped the field and appreciate the creative technologies that they used. So curating this exhibition was a really important lesson for me. And I kind of tried to prove that even niche topics can engage a wider audience. So I'm also kind of obsessed with documentation. For this project, I collected interviews with artists while we were selecting works on the opening night and on following weeks. I recorded interviews with them. Most of them are now collected in this book that just came out, The Algorithmic Dimension. And I also filmed some footage during the curatorial process. And this is a short video that documents that time. So during this curatorial project, there were also times where some site-specific installations took an unpredictable turn and generated some happy accidents, like this interactive generative installation by Ernest Edmonds that is called Shaping Space. So because of the shape of the room where we installed the work, we got some unexpected reflections on the wall that were not part of the original plan. And Ernest was present during the installation and really liked the effect on the walls. So we decided to keep it like this. And I took again the opportunity to interview him on the history of all iterations of this work over the years. And we published this article in Museums and Digital Culture just after the exhibition. What I found extremely exciting in all this process was also the fact that I took this opportunity to commission works to some of the featured artists. So this is something that I started with algorithmic science, and it has now become a regular practice for me. Commissioning new works to those pioneers that I've been studying for so long means a lot to me, and it helps me making the point that their work has a history, but it's also very much alive. It still inspires younger generations of artists, and it's still relevant to today's art. And of course, I document all these phases of this process too. I will mention briefly two commissions that I curated and produced specifically for algorithmic science. One is this one by Ernest Edmonds called Growth and Form. This is a site-specific installation that takes data from camera, which is directed into the space in front of the gallery entrance. So it catches the movements of visitors entering the gallery and generates colors and patterns that are projected on the wall. The second commission was by Vera Molnar. It was my second commission for the exhibition, and I asked Roman to create a work inspired by his algorithmic poetry drawings that were on display in the exhibition. And we were able to show also an 8-hour video that documents the way the drawing procedure works, and from the first stroke to the last one. So once again, documentation was key when showing this particular piece. And this is the view from the gallery that shows both the original works and the video. And this led me to work more closely with Vera Molnar. I recorded many interviews with her. I visited her many times, and her voice always sounded full of curiosity, reflecting the lively nature of her creative, cheerful, and inquisitive mind. During one of our many conversations where we discussed aspects of our collaboration, Molnar shared with me, clarifying it, and asked about her creativity and her creative process in a very simple but effective way. He says, all that has motivated me in life and still does today is curiosity. In life, that's what interests me. Waking up in the morning and asking myself, what if? So Vera's entire career spanned over 80 years. And throughout this career, her creative process has been driven by curiosity and surprise till the last days. She was classically trained as a painter at the Budapest University of Fine Art, but her rebellious nature soon led her to abandon tradition and reject all classical rules in favor of the creation of a new artistic language based on logical procedures. This new grammar helped her generate new forms, and as a consequence, an art that is less constricted by convention and free from any academism. So from 1947, when Molnar moved to Paris, she started to be exposed to the work of Paris-based abstractionists like Sonia Delaunay and François Morellet, and the Swiss constructivists. Abstract forms of constructivist inspiration, and on the idea of applying mathematically rigorous aesthetic theory to her creative practice, as expressed by Max Bense's information aesthetic. Molnar's search for a logic system to generate new images took a new turn when she introduced chance as a rule that governs the structure and arrangement of shapes and colors in her work. Initially using the telephone directory as a random number generator, she began making compositions that encouraged an exciting visual dialogue that creates surprise. And from this moment, and for almost a decade on, Molnar consistently applied this method to her art practice until she formulated a more sophisticated approach to composition, which was based on the notion of the imaginary machine. And this notion, introduced by her by a friend, the French composer Michel Philippot, invited composers to approach composition in a rigorous way, particularly by defining the entities and operating methods of their music, just as on an electronic computer. So this imaginary device, conceptualized at the time when computers were available only to large institutions that could afford their really high costs, allowed Molnar to rigorously define the processes of her thinking and to mentally run a limited but exhaustive series of calculations that would be then translated into drawings executed by hand by the artist. It's only from 1968, once the computer became more accessible to academic institutions and research laboratories in France, that Molnar found in the computer an ally that would assist her in providing faster and multiple solutions in her search for surprise in her work. And since then, Molnar has maintained a dynamic dialogue between her manual production and her automatic practice, relying on the computer as a tool to perform complex and laborious tasks. Molnar maintains that a machine cannot generate the sparkle of creativity on its own. The computer, she stresses, does not know how to dream, imagine, or invent. However, she believes that the computer can act as a highly effective tool to perform all those necessary tasks that can help an artist to reach his or her desired goals. So Molnar argues that the approach to painting has changed thanks to the computer, and particularly thanks to the advent of the cathode ray tube screen technology that made it possible to visualize data on a screen and to interact with code in real time. So in this way, through the computer, the artist is now able to materialize an almost infinite number of variations from initial input and to intervene on any parameter, rectifying it on the spot. Sorry, I just get messages from the Zoom. Okay. So I don't know if I show you this quote already, but she said at one point, what is so thrilling to experience is not only the stepwise approach towards the envisioned goal, but also sometimes the transformation of a different version into one that I found aesthetically pleasing. So this mix of real-time interaction, instant feedback, and the machine's ability to perform tasks quickly creates what Molnar calls a conversational method with the computer. So through her conceptual approach to computing, Molnar has created this dynamic dialogue where the computer takes care of the tedious parts of the process while also offering endless possibilities and fresh ideas that expand the artist's creativity. And she finds this blend both amusing and somewhat ironic. And this takes me to my latest project and new commission with her. Okay. So my curatorial practice is strongly inspired by the venue and by the place where I'm curating the show. For years, I've been thinking about curating an exhibition that celebrates the history of computer art to present at the Venice Biennale. So I've been looking for a way to connect early computational art with Venice. And on a late October night in 2017, at the opening of Algorithmic Science, one of the guests asked me, so what's next? And the answer came straight from my heart. I want to connect my two biggest passions, the history of computer art, with the city I love the most, Venice, which is also my hometown. So that was the moment when I started to imagine the imaginable, an artwork that would capture a dialogue between two arts, somehow at the opposite side of the spectrum. The first one, computational art, is an art that has a recent history and has been considered by many as cold, distant, impersonal. The second one, the art of glassmaking, one of the oldest Venetian traditions alive since the 13th century, which deals with fire, raw materials, melting silica-based sand, trade secrets, and the almost impossible task of controlling one of the most temperamental, stubborn, and fragile materials of all. I was born and grew up in Venice, and I've been always fascinated by the art of glassmaking. So I started to think about possible collaborations. And to make a long story short, in 2019, I initiated a new collaboration between one of my favorite artists, Vera, and a traditional Venetian glassmaker team, whose members are descendants of one of the historic families of Murano, where the ancient technique of glassmaking originated in the 13th century. So this is the first time that a pioneer of computer art has worked with glass, and the collaboration between an artist who's been at the forefront of art and technology experimentation for over 80 years, and one of the oldest Venetian glassmakers, which are dedicated to preserving an endangered tradition, really highlights how creativity and craftsmanship come together in a very innovative way. So what I've done was I went straight to Vera's studio, and I asked her, would you like to do something with glass in Murano? And she was really, really excited. She said, yeah, yes, let's do it. And she went straight to her personal library, and she picked up this catalog from 1979. And this is one of her first exhibitions, group show. And she was really keen on this image, which is taken from a canvas that she made in 1975. We really like this image. We kept talking about other images, but then somehow we kept coming back together to come back to this image all the time. So eventually we selected this image as the inspiration that will start this project in glass. And through my research, I realized that this 1975 canvas, which is called Computer Icon 2, in turns originates from a series of computer plotter drawings made in 1974 called Trapeze. I don't know how to pronounce this properly, sorry, but you got the point. And this was a series of 9 plotters that look at one of Vera's constant fascinations, which is the dichotomy and a search for balance between order and disorder. So this series starts from a very rational, organized grid, and then she adds an element of distortion that brings all these images to a complete chaos. So the new commission, titled Icon 2020, takes for the first time one of Molnar's key original concepts, which is the idea of order and disorder, to 3 dimension as a sculpture. The production of Icon 2020 has involved Vera, myself, and the glassmaking team in a long creative process. Here's me in awe of Vera in her studio when we started talking about this project. And I was able to develop this concept directly with her for over 2 years in Paris, thanks to a residency supported by Leonardo and the University of Exeter. Vera was extremely excited about this project, and she started taking sketches and notes that she regularly shared with me and with the glassmakers. And this is one of them. So that gave us the input to start working on various prototypes to test the materials and the shapes and to choose which technique would give the best result. And in terms of prototypes, you computer art society people are really dear to me. I brought some prototypes that I've never shown before. They were supposed to be part of the exhibition at the Venice Biennale, but then because of the space constraint, I was not able to show them. So I placed them over there in a kind of small exhibit for you. And after the Q&A, I'll be happy to show you what they represent. So as I said, it was a very long creative process. There were various phases. And also this process was initially slowed down by the devastating flooding in Venice in November 2019, which hit the island of Murano particularly hard, destroying or severely damaging most of the furnaces. And then, of course, the global pandemic of 2020 added even more delays. So it was pretty complex to get through it. But we were also lucky that we could experiment and work on an empty furnace during this whole time. And this is probably one of the reasons why we managed to succeed, because we were literally working with all this material and the team was really excited to learn new techniques to reach the vision of Vera's work. So we got a stage, the first round of trials, to test the material's durability and making sure the construction schedule was realistic. And then we had a stage that involved creating prototypes using different molding techniques. And by mixing traditional methods with more innovative techniques like fusing, hot sculpting, and cold working, the team of glassmakers determined the best way to create a glass sculpture that the artist's vision. So the final stage of production produced 4 unique pieces and a limited edition of 12 signed artworks. And this stage required the use of high quality materials, including Murano glass and hand hammered 24-karat gold leaf. Now, working with glass is extremely complicated because it's unpredictable, temperamental, and fragile. So during the entire production phase, there was a constant dialogue between Vera, the glassmakers, and myself to solve all the technical challenges. We completed the work in 2021, and this is a picture of the final work. Which is about 60 centimeters by 60. And this is the overall picture. So Icon 2020 is split into 2 parts. So hanging from the ceiling is a square of thick glass, partially coated in gold leaf, from which 100 trapezoids have been cut out. And the trapezoids are all different in sizes and shape, and they lie on the floor, the square glass work, which is hanging from the ceiling. And I really like this picture. This is Vera with one of these pieces the day I show it to her the first time in person. And then a month later, signed all the paperwork to complete the production phase. And I had made a necklace out of one of these pieces that she's wearing here. And I mean, it was a very, very personal project for both of us and a really nice memory. Although it was really, really challenging. I mean, technically speaking, the making of this piece was really challenging. So during production, there were many, many failed attempts. So this is one, for example, and we kept most of them, like this one. Not just because they're beautiful, but because each of them represented a step forward to learn the technique to make the final sculpture. So there were some happy accidents there as well, like this one. This is a particular work. This is called Icon Ruby, and it shows an area where the gold leaf accidentally burned and left this beautiful red mark inside the glass. And this particular reaction is of burnt gold is something that happens very rarely, and it cannot be replicated at will. So when Vera saw it, she loved it. And it kind of shows the more artisanal side of her work, and even more so that of the Murano tradition. So this whole process became the inspiration for my tutorial project that I presented at the Venice Biennale in 2022. It was an exhibition centered on Icon 2020. So taking the new commission as a center point, this exhibition explored the process that made this sculpture possible, bringing together preparatory sketches, original plotter drawings, and documentation material that reveal the complexities behind the making of this sculpture. The exhibition was hosted by the very same furnace and gallery that produced the final artworks. So the white door that you probably see on the left is actually the door that takes you to the furnace where the pieces were baked, they were made. So it made the whole story kind of, it made sense to have it there. So it featured the canvas from 1975, the original sketches like this one, photographs made during the making of the pieces. This is the 1975 canvas. The original plotter drawing series coming from Budapest. The glass pieces, of course. And I documented everything in a short documentary that you can find on YouTube. With this project, I really wanted to show that computational art has a rich history, and it continues to evolve with the very pioneers who've been shaping new art forms and techniques since the 60s, still leading the way. And this collaboration between Molnar and the Murano glassmaking team proves that both art forms are not only still relevant, but incredibly dynamic. And what's more, the exhibition shows that digital art can have a tangible, crafted quality, whether through code, glass, as we see here. After this exhibition, last year, to celebrate Vera's impending 100th birthday, I curated a larger celebratory exhibition in Rome that opened in November 2023 and ran through her birthday. It was hosted by the Hungarian Cultural Center in Rome, this really regal palace from the Baroque architect Borromini. So I thought it was really like the best place to celebrate her 100th birthday with this exhibition that looked at three major themes in her career. One is the square, one is the line, and in particular that of Mount Saint-Victoire. And of course, more pictures here of the mountain Saint-Victoire. And this was a really interesting composition that we asked students to rearrange once a month under Vera's suggestion. And this is another side of the room about this thematic line. And it was also an opportunity to show a really new project that we were working together. And if I have time, I will tell you a bit about this. And also it was an opportunity to interact with young audiences. So I organized some workshops. These are pictures of the opening where another icon, Fendi, came to the opening. And she's 90 years old. Again, she was really excited to see this. And I sent Vera the pictures just after the opening, and she was very, very happy about these. And she sadly passed away 2 weeks after that. So I'm really happy that she managed to see these pictures, and they gave her lots of joy. As I said, I had the opportunity to work with really young artists, in this case, like 8 years old kids that came in the gallery, and we worked on the notion of randomness through dice and collage to recreate variations of Vera's work. So this was just before the closing of the exhibition in March last year. And it's very, very heartwarming and a great way to introduce younger audiences to her work. Now, the last probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes. This is the very last project we were working on. With Vera, we started a conversation about Venice, her memories about her travels to Venice with her parents when she was a kid. And she remembered that she visited the Venice, the Galleria dell'Accademia in Venice, where there is this series of paintings by the Renaissance painter Carpaccio from the 14th century, showing the dream martyrdom of Saint Ursula. So she asked me to look at this particular painting, which is called The Dream of Saint Ursula. The story is the story about Saint Ursula that in a dream receives a visit from an angel that announces her martyrdom. And Vera really liked this image. She saw especially the geometrical shape of it. It's a scene set literally in a cube room. And she was really, really attracted by the vertical lines, the horizontal lines, the round circle lines, and the diagonals. So she asked me to work on this and to select all these different images. And we came up with this, these 5 plates, each showing all the horizontal lines in the painting, all the diagonals, vertical, round. And then the last one, she really insisted, she wanted to show the faces of the characters, and she really, really wanted the dog. She kept asking me, so is a dog there? So she was really, really playful with her research, but also very, very determined. So the idea was to create 5 sheets of perspex using the original colors taken from Carpaccio's painting. And this is a picture that I've taken in Vera's room, in the care home where she was staying in the last few years of her life. And this was the superimposition of the 5 transparencies showing the whole painting like reconstructed. So we selected the 5 most important colors that she liked, and we applied them to each plate. And we made a prototype, which is now the only thing we have about this project. And each side, each each side of the cube would represent one plate, and this was the final work we worked together. As I said, it was fantastic to work with her because it was a blend of determination and playfulness. So I'm really grateful that I could do that with her. And this is the last quote that I have from her, where she says that she's not a concrete artist. She doesn't see herself as a concrete artist, inventing systems and then following them. She liked taking little side routes. She loved to be disturbed, and she didn't like it. So I think this is all for me. And thank you very much. And I'll be happy to show you.
Sure, we will have questions. So I think we have enough time for a few, actually. So, ask a question.
So just a little bit of historical context then, the computational art, how is that tying into a lot of the video and media art like Nam June Paik that's coming out of the 60s? How do you bring that into that particular historic thread?
It's video art, I think, has a kind of different feel compared to graphic art. So I've Vera, for example, was always she knew about what was happening around. She had lots of discussions with fellow artists, but she was also very concentrated in what she was doing. So she was not particularly interested, for example, in video making. She was really excited about processes and programming that would then take a shape or a form. So I don't know if that's. Are you looking for like an art historical?
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting because this work comes out, you know, like her work and starting to evolve, and the computer stuff starts to evolve kind of at the time and slightly after the first video and artists and there's a kind of, I can see a little bit of overlap. I mean, the interest of chance and repetition and pattern and so forth. And so I was just wondering how much of an interplay there was between those.
I think there was a lot of separation between these fields at that time, but definitely randomness is something that plays a role in all these fields. And it's funny that randomness even play a role here in this project at the very end of her career. So it was still really, really key to her. So even the way we placed the gold leaves on the glass was totally random through little squares of hammer gold. And she really loved this kind of continuation of the same notion of randomness through squares, which is something that connects all her work.
Another question?
Thank you for that. This is a really interesting talk. I wonder, could you say a bit more about her interest in chance? So obviously there's a link with Hans' art and surrealism, but did she have a spiritual dimension on that? Was she interested in Buddhism or the I Ching, like later people like Cage were?
I think randomness for her played a role, especially, I mean, she saw it as more like intuition. So she really felt applying these random numbers through the computer was really helping her to reach a number of variations that she was not able to reach by just calculating everything by hand. So it definitely had it really was inspired by this role that she gave to randomness as intuition. She even talked about artificial intuition, which is a really nice concept, especially applied to today's art. I'm not sure that she was particularly spiritual about that in terms of Buddhism. But she definitely had a sense of and curiosity about this intuition that would govern the processes behind the works.
Oh, yeah, take a question here, maybe.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I just had a question about the spatial dimension of the cube at the end and how the color is located in it. Is it, yeah.
The picture, because it's a bit difficult to explain. But the idea was, the original idea was to have 5 sheets.
Okay.
And to create a cube out of these sheets.
Yeah.
For this prototype, we used the 4 walls of this cube to paint the different plates, and the yellow signs, the 5th wall was inserted in the first one. So as a prototype, it was something that showed the conceptual image that she had. We also had a prototype with thin perspex sheets that was very reminiscent of those 60s optical works. She liked them both, but we kept this as a final piece because it looked, I mean, it was literally a cube, like the interior of the room, painted by Carpaccio. So that was.
Thank you, beautiful.
Question at front here.
Thank you, Francesca. It was fascinating. What did the glassmakers think of the work? What did they get out of it?
Well, they were really excited to work with an art. They didn't even know about the existence of computational art and pioneers. So for them, it was a really new project. And they loved the interaction with Vera because she had some ideas, but she was also flexible to interact with all the challenges that we had, technical challenges. In terms of technical challenges, this project was really interesting for the glassmaker team because they learned this new technique that is usually used for commercial projects, like this cutting on cold glass to make these very precise 100 trapezoids taken out of the glass. So they use this new technology that, again, it's used for commercial uses. And so it was the first time that they were using for art projects. And the funny thing is that this machine that cuts glass when it's cold through a high pressure water jet looks very, very similar to the old plotter drawing machine. So it's literally an arm, a mechanical arm that points to the glass and inject the high water pressure and it cuts out all the shapes. So I filmed this this process, and for them, for the glassmaker team, it was something new because they never used it before for their works. And for me, it was just like going back to seeing a plotter machine drawing, you know, the drawings that gave birth to this project. So it was, yeah, it was a really interesting learning project for everyone.
Maybe I could ask a quick question. So I introduced you as a art historian and curator, and it's very rare, I think, for art historians and curators to get involved in the production of work with the artist. I wonder if you had any insights about that process. It's almost, I felt it was almost like a gonzo approach to art history.
It's a very practical outcome of my job. I didn't know about the existence of curators working on new commissions. It was just like a knowledge that I had when I had this idea. And I have a very practical fine art background myself, so I went to art school when I was everything. And I kept painting my whole life. So I have this practical sense of things. I love solving practical issues. And I love, even in my curatorial practice, I love knowing the weight of each artwork, the dimensions, where to put them. So this was a really interesting process for me. And I actually learned that I love doing it. So I'm keeping this.
And you could see this being part of how you work in the future. You could study the artist and work with the artist.
And actually working with an artist so close to a new artwork with them really tells me a lot about their creative process. I learn a lot about how they work. So it kind of feeds into my art historical research. So thanks to this project and to these commissions that I've done recently, I really learned that this is something that I really love to do.
Maybe one more quick question, if anybody would like one. This one over here, yeah.
Could you please just talk a bit more about artificial intuition, what she meant by that?
Yes. I mean, do we have...
Yeah, well, is it possible to answer that one quickly?
I don't know, but I think she was really excited about the role of randomness in her creative process from the very beginning. So even before the computer came to her life. And when she saw the computer for the first time in Paris in 1968, she couldn't believe that she had access to this kind of slave that would do lots of work for her. And when she realized that with randomness, she could get millions of variations from the same theme, she got really, really excited and fascinated to explore more. So this is how she saw that. She learned Fortran, she learned BASIC at the very beginning, but she was not like a keen programmer. So in the 80s, when she started to work with collaborators, she kind of passed that task to them. So she always worked closely with the programmer to explore more about that. When was it? When she was 98, she made her first NFT. I was not very keen on, I mean, I've never been keen on NFTs, even from view. So I really kind of resented a bit that idea. But she was really curious to try, and she made one with the Bernard Chavot Gallery in Paris, and that was sold immediately at Sotheby's the moment she put it out. She made a grid of 10 by 10 squares, and she asked some of her friends to fill one square with a pastel color. I even took part in one of these, so I filled this square with a green pastel, and then she responded to that by filling the second square. So that was the NFT. She was really happy with that, curious about the result, and she was really amused by the fact that someone would buy a piece of art that is not actually physical and is probably stored in an archive, and she found it really amusing. So I'm sure that she would have played with artificial intelligence even. So she still said that for her, art is something that you hang on a wall, so something that has materiality, but her playfulness allow her to experiment with all these different forms. So that's probably her.
I think that's a really good point to finish on. So thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you.
Time for you to maybe
yes.
show some of the objects you
Yes.
brought along.
Yes, so I brought some prototypes that I could not show at the Venice Biennale. They show two different phases of the production. One is the very first sample that I brought to Vera. very rough sketch of the idea. And the other two are samples where we tested liquid gold, which is beautiful. I really love that one, but it was so expensive that the glassmaker told me, please don't choose that one because it's really, really expensive. But the sample shows the result. And thank God Vera liked the other one with the foil for other reasons, for this randomness that was implied with the placing of the foil. So yeah, you're more than welcome to see them, touch them. Careful because it's glass, so it could be sharp, but you're more than welcome to.
I was going to also add that there is wine in the other room, but I would suggest the wine doesn't go anywhere near.
You can clean them, but
Yeah. And you're around for the next hour, so maybe have a chat and
The,
social time.